if you didn't need money, if you didn't have to acquire money, if you didn't have to earn it, and you were reasonably confident that you would always have it, what would you do with your lives? If your security was already laid out, i.e. if you was like on a pension, for instance, you've got your money, you've got a reasonable health, what would you do? What would you do, people? Now, the dilemma I'm in, and I've been speaking about in lots of videos, is that having found paradise, I'm now speculating whether I want to leave it. And let me tell you, people, this isn't any easy decision. I've read plenty of books about this spiritual path, the religious path. People looking for what I found. Looking for this great awakening, looking for an enlightenment, looking for emancipation, looking for contentment, looking for deep and rich inner peace. I've found and possess all of those things. And so to sit here whenever I want to is really quite something. And so I'm presenting to my therapist, and the reason why I'm in therapy is because I couldn't find anyone else intelligent to speak with about such things. And so I got in the queue for 5 years. I've waited 5 years to get to speak with somebody, because I want to pursue something. And this pursuance pertains to whether or not I want to leave heaven. At least if I want to leave heaven on a 3-day week, let's say, or not. Somebody in the comments said, "You're always in the graveyard in the daytime. Stop being a sissy and go there in the night time." Oh my goodness. Well, I have actually taken DMT in that graveyard over there, where there's new burials, and I saw nothing. I felt nothing other than the regular DMT stuff. And because it was so dark, I couldn't see any imagery with open eyes, and so I closed eyes and I got the regular DMT stuff, and so pretty uneventful, to be fair, people. But when we are presented with choices like, do you want to continue to live in heaven, awake and brave? Or do you want to start putting your toe back into hell? Because that's effectively what it is. In recent times, I've been speaking with varying people and listening to their lives, and they are experiencing borderline hell, with health insecurities, health scares, relationship insecurities, insecurities in general about happiness and contentedness and the future and family building and all these things. And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I'm so far out of that. That I don't have to consider huge issues like, who am I going to have a family with? Can I depend on the present partner to be the appropriate parent and partner and comrade and all the rest of it? Goodness me, there's so many insecurities. And then when we start to look at our health and the health these days, you know, people are getting diagnosed and they're getting reports on the National Health app, you know, those of us in Great Britain, and I'm assuming all countries have them. You go and see a doctor or specialist and then they never phone you with any results or anything like that. You have to look on the app. And on the app, it's written basically in code that the physicians understand, and it pertains to their deeper knowledge, and it means nothing to us other than you see words like normal, anomaly, and not normal, or maybe need to speak to a doctor or something like this. And so you get those things, and people get those things come through, and what do you think about them? All of a sudden it's going to cause stress, isn't it? So the whole thing about the National Health Service these days, they're not taking into consideration at all people's perception, how they're going to be perceiving this information when it's only half-baked. It doesn't consist of any assurance or anything substantial. It's just very iffy, and the average Joe can't interpret it. And so then you have to make another appointment to see a doctor, and then you got to wait another 2 weeks, and you got to carry the weight of this shit. It's shocking, really, but that's the way the world's going, people. So I'm very fortunate in that I don't get ill, and I've only had one cold in 16 years. 16 years. One cold, people. Not even a snivel or a cough. Just had one cold once, and it just went onto my chest. And it was when I was in prison. We were banged up in one cell. There was 18 men sleeping in bunks and in the floor space as well, because it was that overcrowded. And you've got one open toilet, and that's it. You're there 24 hours a day. You can imagine all the malarkey going on. And you've got all different sorts. You've got Africans, you've got Mexicans, you've got South Americans, you've got Caucasian. You've got all different sorts of people from all walks of life contained for 24 hours a day. I was like that for 19 days. 19 days in one of these holding centres, people. And then I was in a 2 or 3 man cell for 6 weeks. And then I spent 6 months in an open dormitory, and then I spent another 5 months in cells with 1 or 2 persons. And you know, close proximity to people of all walks of life, it's really something. And for a psychoanalyst and therapist, well, I had plenty to keep me busy. And what I will say is that everybody that shared a cell with me were very, very happy with how I am as a person, mostly in a meditation or reading, but always available for consultation or to teach them about meditation and listen to their dreams and interpret them for them and give them advice as to their lifestyles and things like that. So pretty well I was known as the therapist, the guru. But now, this is my life. Unfortunately, I can't do this throughout the whole year because the weather doesn't permit in this country. But I've got plenty of things to occupy myself and to keep me in my cave. But you see, I'm going to therapy because I want to look inside. And albeit I can look inside myself, and I have looked inside myself, and I will still be looking inside myself when I go to the therapist. But going to therapy, it just adds a little bit of a something, a little bit of a prompt, and it keeps you contained. I have an hour and a half therapy sessions, and so I've got an hour and a half to really hone in without any distractions, without, oh, I feel like a cup of tea, or I'm hungry, or shall I have a beer, or, you know, should I go cycling, it's a beautiful day, and all these sort of things. No, for an hour and a half I'm concentrated with someone who has a PhD and is accredited with being very proficient in what she does. So I'm doing that, and I'm presenting to her things that I want to look into, and I want to get abreast of, and I want her to inquire into. And so between the pair of us, we're looking at the parts, and I'm asking the parts, and she's asking the parts, what do these parts want from life? What do they want to do? Do they want to continue as they are? Have they any aspirations? Do they want to make any changes? And these sort of things. Because there are parts of me which are very, very happy with my life. And in actual fact, I can't fault my life. How many of you can actually say that you cannot fault your life? And you wouldn't want it to change in any shape or form because you are in ecstasy. How many of you can say that? It's not just about the life, it's about how you've conditioned your mind and your body. When the body is functioning perfect and it feels perfect, and you can think and utilize your mind in a very, very intellectual way whenever you want to, but when you don't want to, you can completely close it down. You can just put it on the back burner, so there's no thoughts in your mind at all. How many of you can actually do that? Very, very few. And so when you have that facility, then the world is your oyster. And so all of my hours are given to meditation, enjoyment, potential contemplation. So having found myself in paradise, having worked many years to be here, well, I'm sitting in my throne now. And you may think that my throne, this cheap little deck chair, is not much of a throne and not much of an accomplishment, but if you look deeper, people, if you feel what I'm saying, and the vast majority of you won't be able to, but if you can just imagine what your life would be without any stress at all, without any obligations at all, and you can choose to do whatever you want to do, fill your day up with all your favorite hobbies. If you could picture that, then that's what I've got here. And that really is quite something. But if you have a mind that looks at potentials, then you ask yourself, well, okay, now I've found paradise. Do I want to stay here for the rest of my life on planet Earth? Or do I want an adventure again? Do you want to go out on another adventure, awake and brave? Do you want to bring this part of you, which is the swashbuckling adventurer, to the forefront so he can lead you around the world on another adventure or two? Do you want that? And then this enlightened being, this super calm spiritual entity, is kind of like, whoo, let me think about that. Got to think about that, because all this stuff mostly involves planes, trains and automobiles, doesn't it? I can't stand any of those things. I don't want to go in a car, I don't want to go on a bus, I don't want to go on a train, I most certainly don't want to go on a plane. I don't want to be with all the herd and all that sort of stuff. I'm really, really super content just basking under Ra, the sun god, the creator of planet Earth. I'm very happy. Well, why are you talking about this? Why are you making these videos? Why do you keep making these videos? You sound like a stuck record, Awake and Brave. Because I'm an explorer, and I've explored the world, and I explore human consciousness. Now, I'm reading this book again because this book is a powerful book, like all Carl Jung books. They are powerful. And what this book says on the 139th page is psychologist Carl Gustav Jung has discovered, I've discovered the same. I've experienced many of these archetypes, and I've never heard him write about his experiences, experiencing God and the devil and angels. No. He spoke about experiencing Philemon, some sort of archetype which he was in a relationship with when he wrote the Red Book. And during that period, he was questioning his sanity, whether in actual fact he was sane, or whether he was going into other realms which potentially we all can engage with. I've been saying to you guys for a long time, the human mind, consciousness, is so vast, it's so deep, it's so chock-a-block full of potential that most human beings are not even scratching the surface. So I'm going to read you 1.5 pages, and then I'm going to speak to you about what I've read. So this book, Answer to Job, it's when Job is chastised by God and persecuted by God and challenged by God, because God and Satan had a bet. Satan went to God one day and said, "Hey, buddy, mate, my sidekick, my right-hand man," because when you look at the relationship with Satan and God, they are the same thing. They're the birds of a feather, people. They are the right wing and the left wing. They're different wings of the same bird. And if you're going to get your heads around this God thing, this Satan thing, this religious thing, and this spiritual thing, you need to be very, very, very versed in all this stuff. And for those of you that are not aware, I've put 16 years of my life absolutely intensely into it. 10-12 hours every single day of my life. And I've had a myriad of experiences which have endowed me with some very, very powerful knowledge. And of course I've read thousands of books, hundreds of this sort of thing. Now, can you imagine a scenario where Satan, he's probably bored, and he just goes to God and goes, "Hey, dude, you know that guy down there, Job, I think you call him? You think he's your good old boy, right? You think, yeah, he loves you and he respects you, and it doesn't matter what challenges he gets in life, he'll always love you." Well, I don't think he would. And I want to propose to you a bet that I'm going to fuck him up. And when I do fuck him up, he's going to turn his back on you. And then God says, "Not my boy, Job. Oh no. You can throw fire and brimstone at him, he will always love me. And so they shook hands and had a bet. And Satan, I suppose, God, the same thing. They killed all of Job's family, all of his livestock. They riddled him with boils and illnesses of every description, and he was living in 1,000 hells. And so that's what this book's about. Very, very powerful. So, I recommend that you read this book. Any of you that are remotely intellectual, remotely interested in psychology, and looking for the answers. So here it says, the difference between the natural individuation process, which runs its course unconsciously, and the one which is consciously realized, is tremendous. Now you see, you have to have a deep and rich understanding of the vast majority of our lives are run by an entity that we have no knowledge of. We know it's there, but we don't know what it consists of, save for when we enter it during certain conditions. Now we can enter into the unconscious in a dream state when we are no longer regularly conscious. We can enter into the unconscious when we are in a very, very deep meditative state. And in fact, we can't necessarily enter into it, but we get fed, we get sparks, we get neuron flashes of information which give us a little bit of an insight into the vast reservoir of knowledge, which is the unconscious. And Jung posits that we have a collective unconscious as well as a regular personal unconscious. And the collective unconscious has every single bit of information that any human being has ever known. It's a bit like what's in the Akasha. And some of us, we can tap into that. And some of us, when we dream, we get symbolism which derives out of the ancient facet of what we are as human beings. And that's our collective and personal unconscious. So, for those of you that really want to learn to know yourself, I would recommend that you'd start interpreting your own dreams. And so I did this for 4 solid years, and I've got dictionaries diaries about this thick, with all the dreams that I had, and they're very, very archetypal, meaningful, and a wonderful education. And each one of my dream interpretations would take about an hour, because there's a long process that you have to go through. Who has the time and the inclination for that? So, in brief again, the difference between the natural individuation process, when we become individuated, when we realize that we are a separate programmable entity and we have jurisdiction over what we take in and what we put out, rather than the average Joe who are just automaton and they don't have any authority or jurisdiction over what they receive and what they give out, because they're just programs. They don't know what's going on. But when you become individuated, then you do know what's going on, and you look very, very closely at all these things. So the difference between the natural individuation process, which runs its course unconsciously, and the one which is consciously realized, is tremendous. So what we know about what's going on in our individuation process consciously is minuscule compared to the unconscious, which remembers every single thing we've ever heard, said, done, or experienced in our whole lives. This is the vastness. It's like a quantum computer which is inside. In the first case, consciousness nowhere intervenes. The end remains as dark as the beginning. In the second case, so much darkness comes to light that the personality is permeated with light, and consciousness necessarily gains in scope and insight. So when you delve into the unconscious, that's when you see with greater clarity what you are as an individuated person. what you are as a human being. You start to look at your own ontology and all that. But when you're just in the regular conscious state, you're a member of the herd, right? And there's a vast difference, isn't there, for those of you that have experienced the individuated process. The encounter between conscious and unconscious has to ensure that the light which shines in the darkness is not only comprehended by the darkness, but comprehends it. So your darker facets of you comprehend the light and embrace it and become one with it. The yin and yang, they can join, because you can't be enlightened and then still have the darkness. The enlightenment has to encompass the darkness. And it's a paradoxical thing, but there are darker facets to us, the more shady aspects, the more devious, devilish like aspects of us. They're the dark and shadowy and dangerous facets of us. But as long as we shed light on them, we shed light on our shadow. And you know, the metaphor is, of course, you can't shed a light on a shadow, because if you shed a light on a shadow, the shadow disappears. But it's a metaphor because you have to realize the shadow, you have to see the shadow, you have to embrace the shadow, you have to work with the shadow. You know, so much of this is metaphorical, and we have to get our heads around it, otherwise we'll never, you know, be able to progress. So the Filius Solis et Lunae, whatever that means, is the possibility as well as the symbol of the union of opposites. The union of opposites. Things have to come together. You can't just have the lightness and the darkness. You've got to have the both together, otherwise you won't be whole. It is the alpha and the omega of the process, the mediator and intermedius. It has 1,000 names, say the alchemists, meaning that the source from which the individuation process rises and the goal towards which it aims is nameless and ineffable. So what are we actually looking for when we are striving to have the deepest level of insight? Well, call it a billion things, but loosely speaking, you could call it enlightenment. But the enlightenment suggests that there is only light, and now you see all the light and things like that. Well, no, the enlightenment just means that you're aware of the shadow and the darkness and all those negative facets of the human being. They will never go away. The potential is always there. So it's the awareness, it's the overall awareness of the yin and yang. It is only through the psyche that we can establish that God acts upon us. Listen. It's only through this psyche, through our mentalism, through our consciousness, that we can establish that God acts upon us. How else would we? You see, when you've got Bible thumpers and religious persons that are just indoctrinated into dogma, they've got no idea what this means. Absolutely zero idea. They think God's out there, God's watching, and if you ask them where's God, it's kind of like, I don't fucking know, but it's supposed to be up there somewhere. They've never ever thought about it. It's vastly too incredible for them to think about. And it would just shock them to the core and send them spiraling into the abyss if they ever started to ask these questions. That's what the dark night of the soul is about, people. It's about the self-realization, the self-revelation, the revelation of good and evil and all those different sorts of things. It is only through the psyche that we establish that God acts upon us, but we are unable to distinguish whether these actions emanate from God or from the unconscious. So here's the thing, is it God or is it our unconscious? Is it consciousness? Now in my book, I'm broaching lots of these questions, even before I've read books like this. I was well on the journey. Like I'm always saying, when you become enlightened, you enter into that same parameter of consciousness, which enables you to ask all of these questions. And that's why I grasp 100% what Jung is speaking about here, because it all pertains to personal experience. You have to have had this stuff. You have to have had that experience, otherwise you'll always remain in the dark. We cannot tell whether God and the unconscious are two different entities. How could we? if we have a voice in our head, or 1,000 voices in our head, how do we know whether that is our consciousness or whether it's God, or whether there's any difference between our consciousness and God? We don't know. In my book, I speculate that God and consciousness are exactly the same thing. And there's never been a person on the planet that could contest that. It's absolutely incontestable. But when you have experience of such things, when you have deep intuition coupled with experience, and you are in this enlightened state of mind, then you don't have any doubt about that. And you look around and you go, well, look, scientists, they're still fumbling in the dark. They're like 14-year-olds fumbling at their girlfriend's knickers. They don't know what's down there. They've heard that they're supposed to do it, but they don't know what they're looking for. And it's just a big fumble, isn't it? That's what scientists are, people. They're just fumbling in the dark. Both are borderline concepts for transcendental contents. So we cannot tell whether God and the unconscious are two different entities. Both are borderline concepts for transcendental contents. But empirically, it can be established with a sufficient degree of probability that there is in the unconscious an archetype of wholeness which manifests itself spontaneously in dreams. So we have a homunculus, right? A mini-me. Which goes on sojourns and adventures and all these different sorts of things when our everyday consciousness goes offline. There's something that comes online which doesn't have much to do with our everyday consciousness. It's autonomous. It does whatever it wants to do. It can have sex with your grandma. It can have sex with the fucking President of the United States. It can do all different sorts of things. It's completely free to be able to do what it wants to. It's untethered. It doesn't have any morals. It doesn't have any jurisdiction, and so that's why dreams are so wacky. They're absurd because this thing, this entity, this level of consciousness, which is deemed to be unconscious, is completely free. And so it's only the human mind, the ego, which chastises ourselves for thinking such things and acting in such ways, because we have societies and laws and we have morals imposed upon us. But the human mind, left to its own devices, is the mind of God, and the mind of God doesn't have any impositions on it. So that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with the unconscious. You're dealing with the mind of God, people. And so you can call God whatever you want to, but God is yin and God is yang. God is benevolent and God is malevolent. God is the devil. Of course he is. If God is all powerful and he created everything and everything and everything, then, you know, what the fuck was he doing creating the devil if he didn't want to? If he didn't want to have that upsetting his apple cart? No, he's perfectly happy with that. Why? It's because God is the projection of human consciousness, people, and we all know that we have the negative facet and the positive facet. So if we're going to invent a God, then God has to have the negative facet as well. It can't all be perfect, because if God is all perfect and we look at this world and it's not perfect, we go, well, something's gone wrong with our theory. So therefore, we have to project onto God, like he did in the Old Testament, that God is a complete and utter cunt whenever he wants to be, and then he can tell you this is beautiful and he loves you, but his actions don't comply with that. And so then you get to thinking, well, God is a schizophrenic, God is a paradox. Yes, now you're getting there. Now you're getting there. Now, why do we think God is a paradox? Thinking, people, because we're a paradox, because consciousness is a paradox, the cosmos is a paradox. So God has to be paradoxical. So it can't just be one thing. There can't just be one thing in the cosmos. There need other things. They need the polar opposites, you see. So God has to be everything, and God is everything. And if God is everything, then God is you and I. See, and there's no difference between the mini version of God and the bigger version of God, because the bigger version of God is just a figment of our imagination. We've never seen him, we've never met him, we've never had any experience of him whatsoever, save for in our consciousness. And that's why Jung says it is indiscernible, it's indistinguishable for God to be distinguished outside of our consciousness, because it's our consciousness that enables us to think about anything. Without the consciousness, we couldn't think at all. So therefore, if God bestowed consciousness on us, God made us in his image, and he's given us his consciousness, and so we have the exact same consciousness that God has, and there's nothing to suggest that God is any better than us. What proof is there that he created the world in 7 fucking days and this, like, nothing. So we cannot tell whether God and the unconscious are two different entities. Both are borderline concepts for transcendental contents, but empirically it can be established with a sufficient degree of probability that there is in the unconscious an archetype of wholeness which manifests itself spontaneously in dreams, right, etc., and a tendency, independent of the conscious will, to relate other archetypes to this center. Now here's the important bit: independent of the conscious will. That's the dream state. The dream state is absolutely independent to the conscious will, because it doesn't have a conscience, and it will, like I say, it will fuck your grandmother or your granddad. There's gonna be, look, that's just a hypothetical, absurd suggestion. Dreams are absurd, and so whatever absurdity is in the dream, it all goes, it's fine. But when we think about what happened in the dream, and our avatar is supposed to have partook in that, well, we can feel shame. Our avatar, the avatar is God, right? It's nothing to do with us, it's independent. And that's what Jung, through 50 years or doing his psychoanalysis with patients and everything, listening and interpreting dreams, that's what he's concluded. And so this is what my mind's concluded, my investigation into my mind. And so anyone that's enlightened or, you know, deeply into this sort of stuff, they're going to conclude the same thing, people. Because there's a parameter of where you can go. You can't seem to go further, but there is a parameter, and in time we'll all get to that parameter. And a tendency, independent of the conscious will, to relate other archetypes to this center. Now we relate other archetypes, but we also create, the consciousness creates the archetypes. And or either the consciousness in our unconscious dreams, we are creating archetypes, or archetypes are participating in our dreams. Now Jung would say that the archetypes are a phenomenon of the unconscious, and there's all different sorts of archetypes: the knight in shining armor, the wise old man, the wise old woman, and the angel, and the devil, and all these things. They're archetypes. They're things that have been around in the human consciousness seemingly forever. They partake in the unconscious dream scenarios, and so they will make manifest. Consequently, it does not seem improbable that the archetype of wholeness occupies as such a central position, which approximates it to the God image. So, with all these archetypes in our unconscious, then it stands to reason that the archetype of God, and all imposing, omnipotent and powerful and all the rest of it, they're going to be there. Because the human being have this propensity, we have this level of consciousness, we have this archetype. It's a part of our programming, it's a part of the cosmos. Sooner or later we're going to start thinking about it, and then when we do, when we start investigating it, we realize that this archetype has been around forever in all cultures. God. Now what Jung is saying is, well, what's been around forever in all cultures? Consciousness and awareness. Well, how can you distinguish between the two? You can't. Man has invented stupid, fucked up stories about God up here, God there, and Yahweh, and fucking Allah, and all the rest of the nonsense. It's all a fiction of imagination, people. The true essence of God is consciousness. It's the only thing we can never deny. It's always there. Even when we go unconscious, there is another part of the conscious we call the unconscious, which isn't unconscious because it's fucking conscious in its own right. Well, that takes over. It's always conscious. The cosmos is conscious. So the similarity is further born out of the peculiar fact that the archetype produces a symbolism which has always characterized and expressed the deity. These facts make possible a certain qualification of our above theses concerning the indistinguishableness of God and the unconsciousness. Indistinguishable. We can't distinguish. How can we? We're only conscious, or we're only God, or we're only God consciousness. We're nothing else. So how can we say God's over there when God, the notion of God, and anything we think and feel about God's in here? Or maybe it's just here. There's no in here at all. I don't think there's an in here. It's just the universe is conscious. The universe is God, people. And it's like fucking cells in a petri dish. They all pertain to the same virus or life form. It's like atoms, quarks, quasars, or whatever you want to fucking neutrinos. They all come out of the collective. They're all a part of the collective. You can't distinguish them. You can't take them out of the collective. They are a part of the collective. We can't take our bodies. We can't take that church out of the collective. It's in the fucking collective. It consists of the same stuff, exactly the same stuff, just arranged in different ways. The facts that make possible a certain qualification of our above thesis concerning the indistinguishableness of God and the unconscious. Strictly speaking, the God image does not coincide with the unconscious as such, but with a special content of it, namely the archetype of the self. It is this archetype from which we can no longer distinguish the God image empirically. We can't distinguish that from the self, from that thing that makes us feel like a self. Where is the self? We can't find the self. It's just an idea. It's just an idea of consciousness. There is no self. This is my body. These are my eyes. These are my ears. This is my hair. And so, well, who is saying my? The I, the self. Well, where is the self? Your guess is as good as mine. It's just an idea. The self is an idea, people. To give us some sort of a separation, an individuation. There's no separation, there's no individuation. We are God. It is God. There's nothing else outside of God. God is consciousness. Consciousness is God. Wow. So, on the contrary, it only helps us separate man from God and prevents God from becoming man. Now, so when we want to read stupid books like the Bible or the Quran, then the information in there, which is just pure poison, is going to be telling us God's up there, you know, and he's different to you, and you're separate, and God's, ooh, you're going to suffer God's wrath, and this, that, and the other. Well, when you get into the nitty-gritty, you discover there's no up there, there's no out there, there's no in here, there's no nothing, there's oneness, and it's cosmic God consciousness. That's it, period. Over. Faith is certainly right when it impresses on man's mind and heart how infinitely far away and inaccessible God is. Faith is certainly right when it impresses on man's mind and heart how infinitely far away and inaccessible God is. Because faith, the whole thing about faith is, I have faith that you are there. You're looking down on me. You don't need faith, motherfuckers. Just throw faith out. God is in here. In here is God. There's nothing else. For the last time, there's nothing else except God. Everything else is a projection of ideas. And the idea of a human being, and that we're separate and that's separate. There's nothing separate here, people. You've got to learn a whole bunch of shit, and you need to study physics, you need to study quantum physics, you need to study biology, you need to study DNA, you need to study religion and philosophy and metaphysics. You need to study all of these things, and by the time you have, then you'll be where I am. You'll have concluded that this is what's going on, and everything to the everyday consciousness is bollocks. Just bollocks. It's just a dream. It's just a dream avatar having, you know, a pleasant dream most times. I don't want to take anything away from this experience. This experience is brilliant, and even the so-called bad times have been good. It's been absolutely wonderful and marvelous to me. It's a brilliant, beautiful dream, but it's a dream, people. So God is how inaccessible God is, but it also teaches his nearness, his intermediate presence, and it is just this nearness which has to be empirically real if it is not to lose all significance. Only that which acts upon me do I recognize as real and actual, but that which does not affect upon me might as well not exist. So, does God exist? Well, do you feel God? Does God act upon you? What are you? What is the cosmos? Is it not all one? If it's all one, you're God. It's a done deal. If it's all one, which every single thing leads to, it's all one, it's all just a cosmic chemical soup or an idea, it's all one, so therefore we are God. What is we? What is it that enables us to say we? Consciousness. So fundamentally it's consciousness. So what does any scientist on the planet know about consciousness? Zero. Absolute zero. What does any scientist or philosopher on the planet know about God? Zero. So if we look at a couple of concepts then, we look at God and we look at consciousness, and we don't know anything at all about them, save for whatever we fantasize, doesn't it stand to reason that they are the same thing? They are that darkness that we can't see into. They are that light that burns our eyes if we try to observe it. It's the ineffable yin and yang of the cosmos. It's the paradox, people. The cosmos is a paradox. We're a paradox. A paradox cannot discern itself. It's too paradoxical. So, the religious needs long. I'm going to read that line again. Only that which acts upon me do I recognize as real and actual. How can we say anything else is real and actual? How can we say atoms are real and actual? How can we say that black holes are real and actual? I don't buy into that bullshit any shape or form. I say to myself, what acts upon me? This thing. And I speak about that. But that which has no effect upon me might as well not exist. Exactly. What does it mean to us? Nothing. It's only going to be a belief, people. And what is an extension from a belief? Faith. And so that's where we are in the world. The religious need longs for wholeness, and therefore lays hold of the images of wholeness offered by the unconscious, which independently of the conscious mind rise up from the depths of our psychic nature. So the need for wholeness, the need for God, comes from the unconscious. What is the unconscious? Is another facet of God. So God needs himself. God needs God, people. And in this book, if you care to read it, you'll see how Jung proves through rational application that God is consciousness. And everything written about God is just a projection of the humanisms. How could we do anything else? How could we give God attributes that we don't have? Outside of our fantasy and imagination. Anything that we can fantasize about and imagine. We could fantasize that God is like a polka-dotted pink and white Mr. Blobby floating beyond the Neverland. That's God. Well, with 4,200 religions on the planet, some of them have got to be worshipping something like that. And when we look at Allah and Yahweh and Jehovah and just a bearded bloke up there somewhere. Well, if he's a bearded man, then where's the woman? No mention of a woman. Well, if he's a man with a beard and looks like us because God made us in his image, well, he's got a cock. What's he want a cock for? What's he want anything for? What's he want a fucking beard for? What's he want muscles for? What's he want arms and legs for? What's he doing up there on his Jack Jones? making human beings like us to have all this wonderful experience, you'd think, my God, he's sick and tired of that. And that's the whole point of this book, because God, supposedly creating mankind, was very, very envious and jealous of the experience that man can have. And so that's why God made manifest as Jesus and came to have a human experience. Wow, this is powerful stuff, people. This is powerful stuff. God was jealous and envious of his creation. He saw all the wonderful things that human beings were doing, and sometimes it seemed to be painful and suffering, but he wanted to experience this stuff. So he came down here and he had the full fucking gambit. 32 years of earth experience. Banging street whores, Mary Magdalene, and probably having loads of kids, and traveling the world and learning and all that different sort of stuff, and then suffering abject pain in a fictitious death at the end. Good story, yeah? It's a fucking good story, people. So, what do you think about that? Are there any intellectuals there? Are there any of you that have thought about these things before? Are there any of you that have read this book and really contemplated it? Who am I speaking to? Myself. Myself, of course. I'm speaking to myself. It's like Jesus. I'm going to do more videos about how there is no difference between me and Jesus. There's no difference between anybody who is espousing the path for enlightenment. There's no difference. He apparently was doing it 2,000 years ago. I'm doing it now. There's no difference, people. No difference at all. The only difference is the hype that's been generated and fictionalized about some dude walking on the water and born from a virgin and all that nonsense. Nonsense. You get your head around it and you realize that we are God. Wow, that's quite a revelation. And I feel pretty important about that. And I'm very happy to be God, looking out at my creation. And so I'm giving my creation the greatest of respect. And I'm respecting this beer, and I'm respecting the sun up in the sky, and I'm respecting this facility of a deck chair and my tombstone as a desk, and I'm respecting the book and my glasses and all different sorts of things. Wow, it's wonderful to be God.